Hello and welcome. He holds the record as the all-time leading NBA scorer, even though he retired from basketball nearly 20 years ago. And he's still a sporting icon and an inspiration for millions around the world. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was known as Captain Skyhook by his fans after his trademark shot. The sweeping of his arm combined with his heightened technique made the shot completely unstoppable. Well, after helping make the LA Lakers the dominant team of the 1980s, he moved on to become a cultural historian, documenting the rise of African Americans in the 20th century. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar joins us from Los Angeles, where he's just completed his latest project, which marries his two passions, sports and music. It's an audio documentary, On the Shoulders of Giants, about the African-American political, cultural and artistic movements of the early 20th century. Now, he credits these pioneers for paving the way for people such as himself to reach such great heights. Don't forget, we take your calls on this show, and you can reach us at the numbers at the bottom of your screen. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, it's great to have you with us.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much.
I have to start off by asking you describe yourself as a Harlem Renaissance man. Let's explain that to the viewers around the world.
Well, the Harlem Renaissance had to do with a movement that started when Black Americans started to congregate in the northern cities of America. They had to leave the southern part of America because things there were very oppressive. Their political and civil and human rights were totally disregarded, and they were seen as second-class citizens. And they needed to go someplace where they had the space, so to speak, to be able to do things that really enable them to realize their dreams. To this day, the 1920s are known as the Jazz Age, and then that has to do with the dominance of black culture in American life.
Now, at what point did I mean, obviously you're still known as a basketball icon, and I wonder at what point your life changed to start, where you started to want to document cultural history, especially the African-American history.
Actually, for me, it started while I was in high school. I was able to be involved in a project between my junior and senior years in high school that had me in a journalism workshop, and we worked in Harlem to tell the people in Harlem what was going on there. And in order to do that, I had to study about the history of Harlem, and that's what turned me on to the subject of the Harlem Renaissance. And it's been something that has motivated me very passionately ever since then.
Now, when you look at some of the things you discovered when you explored this history of African American culture through the years, was there any one thing that stood out that really made you say this was a turning point, or something that really inspired people as a major turning point?
Well, for me, just to find out how much Black Americans have contributed to American culture that did not get recognized. That really made me very passionate to change that circumstance, to get some acknowledgement for what Black Americans have done to make this nation great.
Now, how do you balance, obviously, looking at the history and indicating or clarifying to people the contribution African Americans have made to American culture, and yet at the same time avoid dredging up any kind of negative feelings and the negative things that were also associated with that time?
Well, we can't escape some of the more unfortunate facts of American history. The suppression of Black Americans is a fact. We can't escape that. But we don't have to dwell on it in ways that pull us down. We have to understand that these things happen and they need to be changed. And the fact that we have the ability to change things to make them better here in our country, I think is one of the things that make our country special and give us the opportunity to still overcome these sad and unfortunate circumstances.
It's interesting when you say, referring to the documentary, how the Harlem Renaissance allows African Americans to be seen as human beings, not just icons of color. But I guess the fact that there were so many challenges that they faced, some of these pioneers, the fact that they achieved it in spite of color is probably the most significant thing, isn't it?
I think so, because the assumption for mainstream America was that Black Americans should remain marginalized and that they should stay in the background and just do menial jobs and have a very minor effect on our national culture. And the leaders of the Harlem Renaissance saw that had to be changed, and that we should be able to go forward and strive to be at our best and contribute the best that we have to offer, not just what is acceptable to those who are in power.
Now, of course, you use an interesting term, and it's a word that's not really used nowadays, of course. You refer to the new Negro. What exactly did that mean?
Well, during the Renaissance, people wanted to. The assumption was that black Americans made good field hands, that they were good at working on a farm, doing strenuous manual labor, and that was it. And the whole idea of the new Negro was that black Americans were the type of people who could be sophisticated and intelligent and capable of doing anything that any other American could do, regardless of race or ethnicity. And that was a radical concept in those days. Nowadays, people don't think about that too much. Any black American that achieves these days is seen as being able to reach the pinnacle of whatever. But in those days, it was a different story. Blacks were assumed not to have the intelligence or the intestinal fortitude to go out and do what needed to be done on a consistent basis.
Now, tell us, Kareem, on this project, the audio documentary that you've done, a fascinating one, by the way, on the shoulders of giants. Giants. How did you first come up with that idea? What was it a reference to?
Well, it was a reference to a statement that was made that,
I'm sorry,
you know what happens when you try to remember something, you can't remember the name. But it was a very famous scientist who said, if I have seen anything, it's because I've stood on the shoulders of giants.
Right.
And for black Americans today, we stand on the shoulders of those who came before us and who sacrificed to make it possible for us to achieve.
When you were writing it, and when we were compiling it, I should say, who did you have in mind as the audience? Who really do you want to listen to this and discover the content?
Well, I wrote it for the American audience. All Americans need to understand what black Americans have contributed to this nation, black Americans included. But all Americans need to understand this, because if you don't understand this, it's very easy to accept the fact that certain segments of America don't deserve the opportunities that all Americans enjoy. That is something that is very easy to fall into. It's a trap to say that people who are recent immigrants, they don't have the wherewithal to contribute to our society. That's a fallacy, and you have to show that it works that way across the board.
Now, of course, African American culture and the history of it has been explored fairly widely. What new are you able to bring to this documentary? What new stories, what new elements can you have you included in this that will help enlighten people more?
Well, I think one new tack that the book kind of exposed was the fact that sports also was a part of the Harlem Renaissance. Most people think of the Harlem Renaissance as political activity, drama, art, photography, those types of things, cultural things. But sports was also part of it. The efforts of black baseball players to be included in the major leagues, that also was an effort by the black population to be taken as equals. I talk about the greatest basketball team you never heard of, the Harlem Wrens basketball team. And again, that was part of it. They wanted to play against the best competition, and that was denied to them. They could not play in the professional leagues because they were black, and something needed to be done about that. In boxing, you have Joe Louis. He really made people change their minds about looking upon a black person as a hero, especially when he beat Max Schmeling in their second fight. All of a sudden, all of America was cheering for a black man. This was a very unusual thing at that time. We also, Jesse Owens is in the audiobook especially. We have him talking about his experiences at the 1936 Olympics and the fact that the black athletes that did so well at the 1936 Olympics were heroes to all of America and made all Americans proud. And this was an unusual occurrence. This had not happened before that.
Now, of course, you mentioned the Harlem Renaissance Big Five, the Harlem Wrens as they were known, and much of the story does concentrate on that. And you describe some of the challenges they faced. I mean, extreme racism and extreme difficulties. And you were noting at the time that NBA stood for No Blacks Allowed in the sport. Now, I wonder, you say that for people like you and many others that have followed some of these pioneers, you stood on the shoulders of giants to get where you are. What do you think helped these people who had no giants' shoulders to stand on? How did they become the giants? What inspired them to overcome the challenges, do you think?
I think they were just motivated by the fact that they wanted to see change. They wanted to see that the barriers that were placed before them did not affect the next generation, and they did everything they could to tear down those barriers. And we owe them so much. It's a shame that they haven't gotten more recognition. A couple of years ago, the United States Congress passed a law that said that the early pioneers, especially in basketball, should be acknowledged for what they did, because they dealt with a lot of adversity just to get to the point where America would give them the chance to compete on an even level with the rest of American society. And that's an extremely generous and sacrifice that we don't see too much of that these days.
I've got to put an email question we got to you from David Edger in Washington, here in Washington, D.C., I should say, here in the USA. And he says, it's been 40 years since the 1968 Olympics and Tommy Smith and John Carlos's black glove-fisted salute. And you stayed home for those games in solidarity with the Olympic Project for Human Rights. What are your memories of those days? And have you wondered what would have happened if you had played at those Olympics and done something similar?
Well, I'm sure it would have been controversial. Just me not participating was controversial. But I felt that a statement should be made, because people were trying to say that the Olympics weren't political, and they were used for political propaganda by all sides. The Eastern Bloc used the success of their athletes to say that this communist socialist system really produced positive results. And on our side of it, we used the success of our athletes to show that the ways of Western democracy were superior. So it was definitely a political situation, and I felt that those guys that went to the Olympics and took the risk that they did to demonstrate their feelings politically, they deserve a lot of credit. That was a very extreme sacrifice that they made.
Now, of course, over so many years, you've been a huge inspiration for young athletes in the USA and beyond, and around the world. And I wonder, when you look at look at some of the African American athletes of today, when you look at the state of the sports and so on, how much of an inspiration do you think they provide? How good a role model are they proving to be when you look at today's athletes?
Well, I think today's athletes really present a mixed bag. You have people who do extraordinary things. Dikembe Mutombo built a hospital in the Congo where there's not even any roads, and there's no medical care in that area. He took the money that he made in his professional career and used it to build a hospital. That's an extraordinary vision and determination to make a change like that, and that should inspire all of us. And then you have other guys who live a very flamboyant lifestyle with lots of jewelry and beautiful cars and everything, and it's all about conspicuous consumerism. And I don't think that serves as the best role model. But you'll find both examples. You can't say it's one way or another.
Well, it's interesting when you talk about decisions being made. There was a time back in 1969 when you were offered $1 million reportedly to go and play with the Harlem Globetrotters, but you decided to stay and play in Milwaukee instead. Why that decision then?
Well, actually, I decided to stay at UCLA. I was attending university at the time, and very early on in my life, while I was still in grade school, my parents identified me getting my college degree as a goal, and that was something I wanted to achieve. So I decided to stay at UCLA and play out the length of my career there. And it didn't hurt me that much. We were very successful, and the fact that I was able to play there that long enabled me to have my value rise in the eyes of the professional scouts. So it didn't end up harming me at all.
Well, Kareem, we had an interesting email that came from Maya Berry in Dearborn in Michigan in the USA. Interesting, as I say, because it says, As a fan of the game and a Muslim, I've always watched you play with great pride. One of the perhaps sillier questions I've always wanted to ask was about the physical challenge of training and playing the game during Ramadan. How do you perform under those conditions? Of course, when you're fasting.
Oh, for me, it was very difficult for me to fast. I'm not a very big guy, and if I started fasting, I would have wasted away to nothing. So for me, I perform my obligation during Ramadan by feeding a family. I would feed them for a month. Since I've retired, I've been able to do a better job at fasting, but it was a very serious challenge. I take my hat off to Hakeem Olajuwon, who was able to fast and continue to play. His team gave him a little bit of time off during Ramadan. They didn't make him practice as much so that he could conserve his strength. But fasting and playing the NBA schedule is a very serious physical challenge, and I wasn't up to it. I would have destroyed my physical conditioning if I had persisted in that.
I have to ask you, when you look at how the sport's become so much more scientific, you know, that it seems like a lot of the natural, not natural skill necessarily, but a lot of the natural approach to the game is being lost to the science of the game. When you look at it as someone who's seen the transition, how do you regard that move towards a much more scientific game as opposed to natural game?
Well, I think science has helped make it easy for people to train. You know, they understand what they need to do to be at their best physically. But still, you have to have a passion for the game. You have to love the game, and you have to really want to excel at it and learn the fundamentals and how to execute the fundamentals and how to work with other people. The teamwork aspect of it is still the key, and the individual preparation and fundamentals is also another key, and that's not going to change. But what you talk about, the scientific aspect of it, having the ability to know how to train and the things that affect your body and how to get the maximum output from your body, I think is a great advantage to today's athletes, and they're lucky to have that type of knowledge at their disposal when they try to perform their sports.
Well, Kareem, I wish you luck with your documentary On the Shoulders of Giants. It's a real pleasure always talking with you. Hope to speak with you again soon.
Thank you. Anybody who wants to know about it can go to our website, www.osgmovie.com, and they can go in there and see what it's all about.
We put that up on the screen so people could see it as well. Thanks, Kareem.
Thank you, Riz. Have a nice day.
Thank you, sir. And thanks for being with us. On the next show, we discuss Tuesday's primary elections across the US, which carry massive weight in narrowing the presidential race. Join us for that, and we'll see you soon. Street Talk's coming up next.